Alright, y'all. Playtime is over.
What is going on?
Stop scrolling right now. Because the second Blueface and Jaidyn hit go live, the internet didn't just react, it panicked. This wasn't a live stream. This was a digital crime scene unfolding in real time with Wi-Fi and zero warning labels. At first, it looked regular, too familiar faces, calm energy, casual vibes. But the internet knows when something's off. And the moment Chrisean Rock's name entered the equation, everything went left fast. Timelines ignited. Screenshots flew. Comment sections turned into emergency rooms. And right there in the middle of the chaos sat a baby silent still in a stroller while adults spiraled like they were auditioning for the messiest reality show never approved by a network. No background music, no producers yelling cut, just raw dysfunction streaming live. Fans didn't know whether to scream, pray, or refresh. Some called it heartbreaking. Others called it calculated. A few called it cruel content farming. But everyone agreed on one thing. This felt wrong in a way you couldn't scroll past. Because when a live stream turns into a family feud and a baby becomes an unwilling spectator, it stops being entertainment. It becomes a moment that sticks. And once you see it, there's no unseeing it. The live didn't start loud. That's the part people keep missing. It started calm enough to feel suspicious. Blueface and Jaidyn popped up on screen with that casual, nothing to see here energy that always means something is absolutely about to happen. No chaos yet. No raised voices. Just vibes that felt a little too controlled. Like the quiet before a storm that already checked the forecast. Viewers clicked in expecting background noise. Instead, they got front row seats to tension that didn't need to be explained. You could feel it in the pauses, in the way words were chosen carefully, but not carefully enough. In the way calm started to feel performative, like everyone was pretending the elephant in the room wasn't wearing designer shoes and pacing. Then people noticed the stroller, not moving, not being acknowledged, just there. And once the internet notices something like that, it never lets go. The comments started whispering before they started screaming. Why is the baby still there? Why is nobody addressing it? Why does this feel like a test nobody agreed to take? Because context matters, and this situation had layers stacked like bad decisions. The history between these three isn't like drama. It's years of emotional whiplash, public breakups, reconciliations, accusations, and loyalty tests broadcast like episodic content. So when Blueface and Jaidyn went live together, people didn't see a stream. They saw a statement, and that statement landed like a brick. The timing alone felt deliberate. Chrisean wasn't on the screen, but she didn't need to be. Her presence hovered over the live's static electricity. Everyone watching knew exactly who this would hit. And when Chrisean's reaction started surfacing almost immediately, raised voice, raw emotion, visible frustration, the internet locked in. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't coincidence. This felt like provocation wrapped in plausible deniability. Chrisean's meltdown didn't come from nowhere. It came from watching something unfold publicly that felt personal, intimate, and invasive. People forget that when lives are constantly broadcast, boundaries get blurry fast. What looks like content to one person feels like humiliation to another, and the baby. That's where everything shifted. Because once a child enters the frame, even silently, the tone changes. Suddenly, jokes feel off, means feel uncomfortable, and everyone watching feels like they're complicit just by staying tuned in. The stroller became a symbol whether anyone wanted it to or not. Fans started splitting immediately. Some argued Blueface and Jaidyn had every right to go live. Others said the situation felt cruel, like bait dressed up as casual streaming. A few insisted everyone was overreacting, but the louder the arguments got, the clearer it became that nobody was actually okay with what they were seeing. Chrisean's emotional response only intensified the scrutiny. Clips spread fast, her voice cracked, her frustration spilled out, and the internet did what it always does. Slowed it down, zoomed it in, and replayed it until pain became performance. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Meltdowns don't happen in a vacuum. They're pressure releases, and the pressure in this situation had been building for a long time. Public narratives, private hurt, loyalty questioned in front of millions. The live stream didn't create the explosion, it just lit the fuse. Blueface's demeanor during all of this only added fuel. Calm, detached, almost indifferent. To some viewers it looked controlled. To others it looked cold. And cold reads as calculated when emotions are running high. On the other side, Jaidyn's presence complicated things further. Some fans framed her as unbothered confidence. Others framed her as complicit. Every glance, every smile, every word choice became subject to interpretation. The stream wasn't just being watched, it was being interrogated, and the stroller remained untouched. That detail haunted the entire moment because it symbolized everything people hate about internet culture when it goes too far. Real life reduced to background props. Emotional moments turned into engagement metrics. Children dragged into adult mess without consent. People started asking the kind of questions that don't have clean answers. Was this intentional? Was it careless? Was it a flex? Or was it simply a failure to read the room? And once those questions start circulating, the damage is already done. The live stream ended, but the fallout didn't. It multiplied. Screenshots replaced explanations, clips out of pace context, and narratives hardened before anyone could slow things down. Chrisean's meltdown was no longer just an emotional reaction. It became a headline, a talking point, a trend out, but beneath the outrage and commentary was something heavier, a sense that everyone had just witnessed a moment that crossed an invisible line. Not because it was illegal, not because it was shocking for shock's sake, but because it felt unnecessary. And the internet hates unnecessary cruelty almost as much as it pretends to love chaos. As the first wave of reactions flooded in, one thing became painfully obvious. This wasn't going to blow over. This wasn't a one-night controversy. This was a fracture point. The kind that reshapes relationships, public perception, and future moves. Because once a live stream exposes this much tension, you don't go back to pretending everything's fine. You go forward damaged, defensive, and under a microscope. And everyone watching knew it. The calm was gone. The chaos had officially clocked in. The internet didn't wait for explanations. It never does. The moment the live stream clips escaped their original context, they mutated into something louder, uglier, and way more profitable for the outrage economy. TikToks popped up with dramatic captions. Twitter threads stretched longer than attention spans. Reaction videos stacked on top of reaction videos like a digital game of Jenga that nobody bothered to stabilize. Memes hit first because humor is how people dodge discomfort. Screenshots of the stroller with captions that tried to be funny but landed heavy. Side-by-side clips comparing calm faces on one screen and emotional chaos on the other. People laughed, then paused, then realized the laugh felt wrong. But by then the algorithm had already eaten. And once memes slowed down, opinions speed up. Comment sections turned into ideological battlefields. One side screamed that this was calculated provocation disguised as just going love. The other side insisted people were projecting trauma onto a situation they didn't understand. Everyone spoke with full confidence. Nobody actually knew anything. Influencers jumped in next. Not directly, of course. Never directly. Just vague statements about protecting children or not everything needs to be content. The subtweets were so obvious they might as well have come with name tags, and fans treated those posts like confirmation from the heavens. That's when the narrative really fractured. Some viewers reframed the live stream as a power move, a visual reminder of who's comfortable and who's unraveling. Calm energy weaponized against emotional vulnerability. Others called it emotional gaslighting on a public stage, the kind that looks subtle until you've lived through it. Then came the pop culture comparisons. People said this made celebrity co-parenting drama look like a parenting seminar, that this was darker than scripted reality TV because no one was getting paid enough to pretend it was fake. Some even joke that if this were a show, executives would have cut the scene for being too bleak, but jokes couldn't outrun the unis anymore because the stroller never left the frame. That detail became the gravitational center of the entire scandal. People weren't debating words anymore. They were debating presence. Why was the baby there? Why wasn't the moment paused? Why did it feel like the quietest person in the room was carrying the most weight? And once that question took hold, outrage got sharper. Chrisean's reaction clips gained traction fast. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were raw. No polish, no clever phrasing, just emotions spelling out unfiltered. Some viewers felt deep sympathy. Others accused her of playing into the spectacle. And the internet, as always, punished vulnerability while pretending to analyze it. Blueface's demeanor stayed calm, almost eerily so. And calm, in a situation like this, becomes controversial. Some called it maturity, others called it manipulation. Because when one person is breaking down and the other looks and bothered, audiences fill the silence with suspicion. Jaidyn became a lightning rod. 2. Every expression was over-interpreted. Confidence was read as cruelty. Stillness was read as complicity. The internet doesn't do neutrality. It demands alignment. And silence is always interpreted as a choice. Thought by now the story wasn't even about the live stream anymore. It was about intention, and intention is impossible to prove but irresistible to argue about. Was this accidental overlap, strategic timing, a flex disguised as coincidence? Each theory found its own echo chamber and refused to leave. The outrage spilled outward. Parenting debates, mental health discourse, boundaries in public relationships. Suddenly, everyone had a TED Talk prepared, and none of it solved the central discomfort that something about this felt off, even if nobody could articulate exactly why. Reaction channels poured gasoline on everything. Titles got louder. Thumbnails got more dramatic. Words like cruel, heartless, and calculated floated around like confetti. The more exaggerated the framing, the more clicks it pulled, and the cycle fed itself. What made it worse was how fast misinformation blended with speculation. Old clips resurfaced, stripped of dates and context. Random screenshots were treated like verified evidence. And once confusion sets in, truth doesn't stand a chance. People started choosing villains because stories feel safer with villains. Some crowned Blueface as the mastermind. Others painted Chrisean as unstable. A few aimed everything at Jaidyn. And in doing so, the internet did what it always does, reduce complex human mess into digestible caricatures. But there was a shift happening beneath the noise. The tone changed, the jokes dried up, the sarcasm sharpened, and more viewers started saying the same thing in different ways. This doesn't feel entertaining anymore. It feels invasive, like watching a door close on something private that should have stayed private. That's when the backlash reached its peak. Not loud outrage, but collective discomfort. The kind that lingers after you close the app. The kind that makes people rewatch clips not for drama, but to understand why it made them uneasy in the first place. And once an audience starts reflecting instead of reacting, the story evolves again, because now it wasn't just about what happened, it was about what it revealed about how easily chaos becomes content, about how children become background details in adult conflicts, about how calm can be louder than yelling, and about how live streams don't end when the stream cuts. They echo by the time the internet realized it might have crossed the line. The damage was already archived, downloaded, and monetized, and the final wave hadn't even hit yet because consequences don't trend immediately. But they arrive quietly, and they were already on the way. The fallout didn't explode. It settled. And somehow that made it worse, because when chaos stops screaming and starts lingering, you realize it's not leaving anytime soon. The live stream was over, but its shadows stayed glued to everyone involved, stretching longer with every replay, every reaction, every uncomfortable pause people couldn't stop thinking about. Public perception shifted almost overnight. Not dramatically, not with a single viral verdict, but subtly, which is far more dangerous. Blueface wasn't being discussed as an artist or personality anymore. He was being discussed as a chess player, calculated, strategic, cold, fair or not. That narrative locked in fast. And once the internet assigns intent, it rarely lets go. Chrisean's image took a hit in a different way. Sympathy and scrutiny collided heated. Some viewers leaned into compassion, pointing out the emotional toll of public humiliation stacked on unresolved history. Others doubled down on criticism, framing her reaction as proof she's too emotional for public life. The contradiction didn't matter. The label stuck anyway. Jaidyn didn't escape unscathed either. Silence became its own controversy, not because she said anything wrong, but because she didn't say anything at all. In online culture, quiet is never neutral. It's interpreted as endorsement, defiance, or strategy, depending on who's watching. And everyone was watching the stroller. That image refused to disappear. It became shorthand, mentioned without explanation, referenced without context, a visual people kept circling back to when they tried to explain why the whole situation fell off. It symbolized a boundary that many felt had been crossed. Even if nobody could point to a rule book that said sewed up behind the scenes, the consequences started to surface in whispers. Not confirmed statements, not dramatic announcements, just subtle shifts, fewer public appearances together, awkward energy in follow-up content. The kind of distance that doesn't scream conflict, but suggests something fractured quietly. Brands and platforms notice, too. Not in a cancel culture way, but in a cautious way. Engagement is great until it comes wrapped in discomfort. When a story starts making audiences uneasy instead of entertained, it becomes a liability, and liabilities get handled carefully. Fans started recalibrating their loyalty. Some disengaged completely, deciding the situation crossed from messy into exhausting. Others leaned in harder, waiting for the next response like it might redeem or condemn someone definitively. But redemption rarely comes in clean packages online. What's unsettling is how normal this all became so fast. The outrage cooled, but the normalization remained. Another live stream, another meltdown, another child in the background, another cycle. And that realization hit harder than any meme ever could. Because this wasn't just about 3 people anymore. It became a case study in how public relationships collapse under constant visibility. How private pain gets flattened into contempt. How audiences demand authenticity, then punish it when it's too real. The internet moved on as it always does, but not without taking souvenirs. Clips archived, opinions hardened, narratives sealed. Everyone involved stepped into their next appearances carrying invisible baggage the audience would never forget. And that's the real aftermath. Not cancellation, not resolution, but permanent context. Everything that happens next will be filtered through this moment. Every calm smile questioned. Every emotional reaction scrutinized. Every live stream dissected before it even starts. This story didn't end with closure. It ended with residue. And residue changes how people are seen, even when the noise dies down. So, while the timeline refreshes and in scandals fight for attention, this one sits quietly in the background waiting to be referenced again. Waiting to resurface the next time emotions run high and cameras start rolling, because the internet doesn't forget moments that made it uncomfortable. It catalogs them. And when the next chapter drops, because there's always a next chapter, everyone will pretend to be surprised while knowing exactly how this story got here. This wasn't the climax. Dotted was the turning point. And Hood comes next. Won't be watched the same way again. If you're still here, congratulations. You didn't just watch a breakdown. You sat through a full internet autopsy. Because this wasn't just a live stream gone left. This was the kind of moment that makes you close the app, stare at the ceiling, and ask yourself why the messiest content always has the strongest Wi-Fi signal. Now, do the obvious. Smash that like button like it personally ruined your piece. Hit subscribe like chaos just went live again. And punch that notification bell so hard it starts buffering emotionally, because when the next scandal drops, you don't want to hear about it late. Drop a comment and keep it real. Was that live stream a calculated flex, careless content farming, or just another case of boundaries evaporating on camera? No safe answers, no polite takes. This comment section is where honesty goes to fight. And let's be clear, this channel doesn't do soft recaps or sugar-coated explanations. We dissect the chaos everyone else scrolls past. We rewind the clips, read between the silences, and call out the moments that make people uncomfortable but can't stop watching. Scandals don't take days off. They don't wait for clarity. And they definitely don't warn you before going live.
So stay locked in.
Stay curious. Stay slightly unhinged. Because here at Vibe Crave, we don't chase the drama. We archive it. And trust me, the next meltdown is already warming up. The next meltdown is already warming.